All right, welcome back to the Elias Macko Show and the third hour of the program. We're beginning this third hour with who I would say is one of our most impactful guests. This is a guest, when she comes on this program, the messages I get afterwards of people saying thank you for having her on. Yasmine Mohammed is with us, a human rights campaigner, author and host of the podcast Forgotten Feminists, is on the show. Yasmine, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Elias.
Let me read something to our listeners, Yasmine. And this actually, you sent this over to me a couple of weeks ago because you got a message from one of our listeners, okay? And this is what a listener of the program sent to you. I'm in Quebec, and I was one of those people who was against the secular Bill 21. I was misinformed. I heard you speak on CJAD recently about the bill and more specifically the laws in France. Hearing your side made me see the light. They continue with even more kind words. But Yasmine, this is the kind of impact that you've had on this program. I would let's just start off there, right? You know, the doing these shows, the podcast, your writing, and we'll get to your latest piece that you've penned as well. Tell me about the outreach you get and the impact you have.
Well, I'm very, very grateful and appreciative for people like you who are willing to even offer me a microphone so that I can get some reach. Because generally, anything that I have to say is considered, not politically correct because I'm not fitting into some preconceived narrative of how people expect an Arab woman to speak who comes from a Muslim background. But the truth is that the people with the petrodollars are the ones that usually have the microphones. And so they're usually the ones that are successful with passing their propaganda. But my view and my perspective and everything that I've been saying is not at all, original or rare. Women like me are very widespread throughout the Middle East, North Africa, and the Muslim world, but we are being silenced. I mean, you can see that with the woman life freedom movement in Iran. You can see what's happening to the women in Afghanistan. Women under these Islamic regimes or any kind of Islamic law are not given a voice. So I'm lucky to be in Canada and to be able to have people like you who allow me to spread my voice far and wide.
Now, Yasmine, I've wanted to have you on the show for a couple of weeks in light of what's happening around the world in reaction to the war in Israel and Gaza. Of course, it was a while back that you wrote your book, Unveiled, How Western Liberals Empower Radical Islam. You've recently penned a piece that sort of echoes those same messages because of what we're seeing around the world. But I wanted to also have you on because you have a family connection to Palestine, right? So I think your perspective here is going to be one where you've seen a lot of the different facets and sides of this. Why don't you tell our listeners a bit about that before we get into what's happening around the world? Tell us a bit more about that.
So my father was born and raised in Gaza, and he lived there until he moved to Egypt to go to university, and that's where he met my mom. And then they got married and moved to the States. And then I was born a few years after that. So, and then my parents got divorced when I was 2 years old. So I was really raised by my mom and the man that she married more than my dad. But after I got away from my mom, who was a fundamentalist Muslim, married me off to a terrorist. And once I was able to get away from her and start my life anew with my daughter, that's when I reconnected with my father again. And the most important thing for my father was always Gaza. He was always talking about Gaza. He had a YouTube page, he had a Facebook page, he was constantly involved in community, engagement around this topic. And his whole message was constantly going on about how embarrassing it is and how humiliating it is that when people think of Palestine, they think of Hamas. And he was horrified by that. He was wanting the voices of the people of Gaza that want peace, that do not want to annihilate all of Israel, that do not want to kill all Jews, that do want to live peacefully side by side, that do want to have, clean water, functioning electricity, safe places for their kids to go to school, that he wanted those people's voices to be heard. But, he's one of the thousands and thousands of people that were being silenced by Hamas. He luckily was actually in Montreal. He was in Canada, so he was safe. But in Gaza, there was lots of campaigns. There was one called We Want to Live, where the people of Gaza took to the streets and they were simply saying that we want to live like these. Even under Israel, they were able to breathe. They were able to survive. They were able to work and make money for their families. But under Hamas, it's a terrorist regime. It's no different than the Taliban in Afghanistan, no different than the Islamic regime in Iran. ISIS. They are not a government organization. They are a terrorist regime. So of course they don't know how to lead the people. Unemployment through the roof, suicide through the roof. And so when these people took to the streets, of course, what happened was that they were beaten up by the police, they were tortured or by Hamas, and they were imprisoned and disappeared, and their families as well. It wasn't even enough. So if one of your family members was out there protesting, you can just expect that your business was going to get extra taxed. They were going to keep on coming into your business, making up all of these rules like, oh, this doesn't follow code and this doesn't blah, 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 because they're basically needing to destroy anybody who criticizes them or speaks up against them.
Now, can those voices outside of Gaza, for people that have moved to the West, can those voices be heard? Because Yasmine, I see some of the protests or rallies, or whatever you want to call it, in Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, and then the rest of the world. It certainly seems like those voices are nowhere to be found.
You're absolutely correct, because they are being silenced by these useful idiots who don't know anything about Gaza, don't know anything about Palestine. They are chanting from the river to the sea. They don't even know what river they're referring to. They don't know anything about the situation. Judith Butler, who is a popular left-wing figure, has recently said, and I quote, "Hamas and Hezbollah are progressive and are part of the global left." I mean, you could not imagine a more ignorant statement by somebody. Hamas and Hezbollah are part of the progressive left. Why doesn't she just continue that and say that ISIS are part of the progressive left as well, and Taliban are part of the progressive left? I mean, it is so deranged for them to even... This is the subtitle of my book, Elias, right? How Western liberals empower radical Islam. And even when I wrote that book, I never imagined that it would actually be this bad. I never imagined that I would actually see people in the streets of Sydney, Australia, chanting "Gas the Jews," or see people all over holding up signs with like a garbage pail with a Star of David in it saying, "We need to clean this planet up." They're so unabashed with their anti-Semitism, with their hate, with their genocidal bloodthirst. They're not even trying to hide it. I mean, I grew up in a Muslim household, in a Muslim community. I lived in Egypt, I lived in Qatar, I lived in Muslim majority countries. And the anti-Semitism and the hate there is very open, very common, very normal. But in the West, it was so hidden and so quiet that I'm honestly truly shocked to find that it's not that different. It really isn't. It's just in a more... you'll find it in universities and with politicians and things like that. It's not even just like racist, ignorant people in the streets, but these are actual educators in Ivy League universities. It's terrifying.
And derangement exists all over the place. The thing about this, it's pervasive everywhere on university campuses. It's left, right, center. It's everywhere. All right, continuing our conversation with Yasmine Mohammed, author, host of the podcast Forgotten Feminists, has recently penned a piece in Newsweek. It's called "The Left is Empowering Radical Islam Again," and goes along with the themes from Yasmine's book, which was called "Unveiled: How Western Liberals Empower Radical Islam." Yasmine, thanks for continuing here with us. I want to talk a bit about how we fix it, if it's fixable, okay? But first things first, let's listen to some audio here. This is from the European Parliament, and this is a member of the European Parliament, Asida Kanto, who's from Belgium, but moved to Belgium from Burkina Faso. And here she is, this is just over a week ago, calling out other members, and a specific member of the European Parliament, for a pro-Hamas statement. Have a listen.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I'm very shocked by the intervention of my colleague. We all here stand for human rights. We stand for the fact that all humans are equal. I really don't know where you have been staying the past days, but maybe you were on the moon or anywhere else. But have you seen what happened in Israel? Have you seen that people went into houses to find human beings, to bring them outside, to kill, kidnap, or kill the babies just because they are Jews? Do you remember history? Do you remember what happened on European soil? Do you want anything like that to happen again? Did you see that a teacher was killed in France last Friday? That today marks 3 years of the assassination and beheading of Samuel Paty? Why don't you speak up against the violation of our rights and our values in Europe? Have you seen the people also chanting in Rome, in London, in Paris, in Amsterdam, in Rotterdam, saying that we are the bad ones, saying that they are defending Palestinians, but in fact they are supporting the Islamic terror group Hamas? Did you see that? Why don't you speak against that? You know, the Palestinians are the first victims of the Hamas. Shame on you.
Thank you, Ms. Kanko. Thank you very much.
Echoes what you said at the end. Palestinians are the victims of Hamas. That's the thing where she was getting caught off at the end. So, Yasmine, for me, the fix, if there's a fix, it's more of that. It's leaders speaking up in that type of tone. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. When I saw the images of that young woman on the back of the pickup truck with her body sprawled and those disgusting, vile men spitting on her, her name is Shani Luke, we've now learned. She's a German-Israeli woman, and they only found her head in Gaza. They haven't found her body yet. So when I saw the images of that woman on the back of the pickup truck, I fully expected to hear nothing but voices like the one that we just heard now. I fully expected that that would be enough for the whole world to understand and to recognize the evil that we are up against. I am still in shock when I'm reading post after post, article after article, watching video after video of people not understanding what this terrorist regime is. You heard the Hamas leader himself in a video that was translated by memory, where he talked about, yes, we have 500 kilometers of tunnels. And the interviewer asked him, if you have 500 kilometers of tunnels, why don't you let the Palestinian people go under those tunnels so that they can be protected? And his answer was, those tunnels are for us. Those tunnels are for Hamas. The Palestinian people are not our problem. They are refugees and they are the UN's problem. That's how these terrorists treat the Palestinian people. So we can't expect the Palestinian people to be speaking up against these monsters because they are being brutalized for it. They're trying, but they need support. They need powerful people in countries. They need people with two functioning brain cells to be able to understand what is happening in this fight. And the idea that Hamas are these freedom, like we are looking at a tiny little microcosm when we're looking at this as a Palestine versus Israel issue. We're not seeing that this is not a Palestine versus Israel issue. This is not an Arab versus Jew issue. This is an Islamic terrorism versus humanity issue. Hamas, in their mandate, they quote a hadith. And the hadith talk about how every Jew on the planet needs to be killed, that even the earth itself will cry out against the Jews and in support of the Muslims. And the rocks and the trees will say, oh, Muslim, there is a Jew hiding behind me, come kill him. That is the same hadith that you will find ISIS talking about, Hezbollah talking about, Al-Qaeda talking about, Boko Haram, all of these terrorist organizations are the same. Hamas is just another one of them. To pretend that they are freedom fighters and anti-colonialists and revolutionaries and all of these lies that are being pushed out there is such a blatant, ignorant disregard for the truth and for the reality of what's actually happening.
Yasmine, I think we've all been doom scrolling over the last little while, right? When you're on your social media and you're scrolling and it's just terrible post after terrible post. Let's try and get to off the social media and onto what's really happening. Let's say in our Western societies, Canada and France and Italy and Germany. How close is the doom scrolling or not to what's really happening?
Well, I was happy to see that in the US, there were these polls released that showed that 84 or 85% of people are actually against Hamas, obviously in support of Israel, defending themselves against Hamas. So that was in America. I don't know about it in any other countries. I haven't seen statistics. But if you look at America and if you look at the doom scrolling and if you read the articles and if you watch the demonstrations and you see people holding up signs that say, we cannot wait for the caliphate. I totally support Hamas and all of these other horrible, stupid things. Dead, like dolls, baby dolls covered in blood that they're bouncing around on a Palestinian flag, like the most horrific things, then you wouldn't believe that the number of people that can actually see what's going on is actually that high. So I'm glad to see that. But public opinion can be swayed, especially for those under 25, because again, when you look at those statistics, you'll find that for kids under 25, it was over 50% of them are in support of Hamas. So all of these things that are up on social media, these little tidbits of videos, these little slogans and these little simplified versions of good guy versus bad guy, that affects people. And it affects people who are not spending the time to actually learn about what's going on and to look at the bigger picture. And so it is important that we do still continue to speak out.
Before I have to let you go, Yasmine, anything that we haven't touched on this morning that you think is important that we should be talking about?
Well, I just think it's important that those 84% of people that actually see what's going on, I believe that they need to speak up. They need to speak up, especially in support of your Jewish neighbors right now. Can you imagine how they must be feeling? This is the worst assault on Jewish people since the Holocaust. I mean, they are terrified. I've seen videos of Jewish people in universities in New York being barricaded in libraries because there's a mob of people outside the door trying to get them. I'm reading statements from friends of mine that are telling me they had to take their kids out of school because they're being greeted with Hail Hitler when they walk into the school, or people that are just getting F Jews screamed into their face because they look like they might be Jewish. Things like this are happening all over the world right now. We have forgotten so quickly. This was October 7th. How did the victims, how did we switch into victim blaming so quickly and turn the victims into the tormentors so quickly and not be able to actually see who are the aggressors, who are the monsters that took children out of their homes and murdered them and murdered entire families and murdered people that were just going to a music festival? How could we have forgotten that so quickly?
Yasmine Mohammed. Yeah, speak up. I would echo that, Yasmine. We have to leave it there. You're always welcome on this program. Thanks so much for coming on this morning. Yasmine Mohammed is a host of the podcast Forgotten Feminists, recently penned a piece over at Newsweek called "The Left is Empowering Radical Islam Again."